this week. I had to cut it down a little bit, or I probably would have done most of her spiel. But Helen sent this through to me, and I'll just read this to you. It was only by chance that Helen ended up living in Ballarat. After having grown up in the outer Melbourne suburb of Sunbury, Helen moved to Ballarat in 1995 to commence university after having had sustained a head injury during Year 12 that resulted in her final study scores not being sufficient to gain entry to her preferred course in Melbourne. As luck would have it, and by her own admission, it was probably one of the best things that could have happened, as she has embraced the Ballarat lifestyle, weather and all, ever since commencing full-time employment with IBM while she completed her studies part-time and purchasing her first property at 20, only briefly moving back to Melbourne for 18 months while working with IBM. Helen was finally formally diagnosed with chronic depression and anxiety aged 19 after having been suicidal and incredibly unwell for some time. Helen wants all women in Ballarat to know that it's okay to be not okay as long as you're willing to never give up. Very happily married now for 14 years to Anthony and with two beautiful boys, James and Paul. Helen is passionate about our Ballarat community and business, I might add, and is often seen promoting and supporting various causes and community events. Helen Stevens.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along today. It is something that's very near and dear to my heart, personally, and I know it affects a lot of people, not only in the Ballarat community, but much further afield. So I thank the board for allowing me to speak today and share my story. And first of all, I just want to clarify a few things. Number one, I'm not medically qualified, okay? I'm not an expert on the clinical, chemical, biological issues surrounding mental illness or depression in particular, but what I am an expert on is my story, how my conditions have affected me and what experiences I have gained throughout my life living with these. So I have chronic depression, I have anxiety issues, I have in the past been suicidal, but this doesn't define who I am. I'm also 5'4" on a really good day. I have brown hair, I have brown eyes, I have a wonderful husband and I have two beautiful kids. I love working and contributing and I love being able to be involved with my family and friends' lives. I'm not going to stand here and try and tell everyone that, you know, there's a miracle cure or that I am 100% cured, because that would be a lie. That would be total BS, basically. But I've learned that it's okay to not be okay as long as I'm willing to admit it and continue to work on it. So before I get down and dirty with my story, I want to discuss some stats. So in Australia, it's estimated that 45% of the population will experience a mental health condition at some stage in their life. Now, I want you to kind of look at this room and basically, rough guess, that would be saying, out of this portion of the room, those two tables. I actually think that underrates it drastically, because these statistics only apply to when it's been clinically diagnosed. And a lot of people still won't go and get help. So what do we mean by mental health conditions? Well, look, that can be a huge range of different things. So let's have a look at some of them. Depression, anxiety, OCD, postnatal depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, bipolar, substance abuse, eating disorders, Tourette's, autism spectrum disorders, schizophrenia, cyclothymia, panic disorders, insomnia, seasonal affective disorder, kleptomania, hoarding, phobias, and that's only a subset. But let's just stick with the one I know about, okay? And this is mine, and probably a lot of other people's. So let's just stick with depression. So coupled with anxiety, a little bit of OCD, this is where I have got the experience and it's what I've dealt with. According to the National Survey of Mental Health and Wellbeing of Adults, which was conducted in 1997, so nearly 20 years ago, depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, the entire world. The prevalence is highest between the age groups of 35 to 44 years of age. However, it's important to keep in mind that it can affect people of all ages, every form of walk of life, the rich, the poor, the educated, the uneducated. It doesn't discriminate. That's true, you know, affirmative action here, you know, depression, you know, it doesn't care. Again, the diagnosed statistics come down to 1 in 8 men and 1 in 5 women. So based on that alone, we're all at a high risk. So what does it feel like? It's different for everyone, and I've tried to describe hundreds of times what it feels like for me, and I've tried to think of how best to recreate it. So if I can just all get you to humour me, and this is only again what it feels like for me, if I could get you all just to stand up. I want you to make sure you've got room to turn around without hitting anyone.
Is this physical?
A little bit. If you have, you know, some stability issues, please don't do it. But I want everyone to close your eyes, okay? So close your eyes, and I want you to turn around 4 times very slowly. Keep your eyes closed, very slowly. Count the numbers in your head. So ideally, for the purpose of this exercise, you might be feeling slightly disorientated, okay? You can't see what's around you. You know that there are other people right nearby, but if you were to reach out, how do you know if you'd be reaching out for help or putting yourself in more harm? Keeping your eyes closed, I want you to make your breathing a little bit shallower so that you can feel what the chest tightness used to feel like for me. I want you to multiply that feeling now by about 100. And that's starting to get close. Everyone sit down. Essentially, it's a combination of things. It's confusion, it's exhausting, it's stressful, it's overwhelming, it's disorientating, it's isolating, and it's so incredibly lonely. For me, when I was at my worst, I was permanently lonely. I could be in a room full of people at an event and all sorts of things, and I'd still feel incredibly alone. The loneliest person in the world. Yep, the sadness sucked, big time. At times it felt like it was never going to get any better. I was suicidal at 15, which was pre my formal diagnosis. My mum walked down to the kitchen one night and I was there with a knife at 15. Again at age 19, right before my formal diagnosis, and again at age 20. In fact, I didn't even really want to celebrate my own 21st birthday. Mum and Dad had planned a great party for me and I just didn't want to have it. Didn't want to do it. The last big crash I had was in 2009 or around there when I was working in a very high pressured role. I was responsible for the safety and well-being of hundreds of staff, working out on railway lines 24 hours a day. I'd worked really hard, a lot of 12+ hour days, constant travel to be able to build up this business, which was a multi-million-dollar business. Like we built that from virtually, they were going to shut it down when he and I started. We built that up to about a $12 million a year business. My kids were suffering, my marriage was suffering, my health was suffering, and I was pushing myself way, way too hard, and I was terrified I was going to drop the ball. Basically, it was the emotional equivalent of watching paint dry. That's about how exciting it was. Not great. I felt nothing, but I felt everything. I felt numb, but also at the same time I was overstimulated. Everything was too much of an effort. I learned to apply a pretty convincing mask during the day, and I'd cry myself to sleep at night. So people always want to know, well, how did you end up with a mental illness? Well, I don't know. You know, they go, did you have a really crappy childhood? Well, no, I didn't actually. I had an awesome childhood. You know, my youngest sister's here today. My older sister's not here because she's a teacher, so she's teaching. My mum's here today. My dad's not because he's not female, obviously. But I grew up with mum, dad, 2 sisters, Associated Pets, quarter-acre block in the little town of Sunbury. Great friendly neighbourhood. We lived in a court. You know, I rode my BMX everywhere. I was one of the tomboys, you know. My BMX had red tyres. Mine was cool. I did better skid marks. You know, I did ballet, gymnastics, netball, basketball. I wasn't really that good at any of them, but I had a go. You know. My older sister is one of those academic wizards. She is so smart. She's just really clever. She always pulled excellent grades, and to me it seemed like she didn't even have to try. She's just really smart. So she's, you know, was a sensational classical dancer, qualified up to a teacher level. You know, she did honours science at Melbourne University, has since done a Masters in Education, and she's also been offered the opportunity to do a PhD. The government's offered to pay for her to do a PhD. She's smart, you know. My younger sister, who's here, she's incredibly talented and creative, you know. She is, well, she was and still is a very talented and award-winning performer, a musician. She was a national level gymnast when she was younger. She trained with the Victorian Institute of Sport, and in Year 7 commenced training with an elite squad in Geelong. In Year 9, she's also smart too, she was accepted into McRobertson Girls High. She's performed on stage with the Melbourne Youth Symphonic Orchestra, accompanied the Scared Weird Little Guys as their percussionist. She's competed and performed at both state, national, and I believe recently an international event. No, you performed there or just had fun? She's travelled overseas in her profession, basically. And she's even sailed on a big yacht, like the yacht we went on last year, Kay. She sailed one of those yachts from Vanuatu back to Australia. She crewed on that yacht. How awesome. You know, I'm the middle child, so yeah, go the middle child syndrome. Look, I'm not an academic genius, I'm not highly creative or very talented like Sharon is in those regards, but I held my own, you know. I was involved in brownies, guides, venturers. I had amazing opportunities to do all sorts of things through this. I got to travel overseas, did a Royal Command performance in Thailand through a show I was in. It was great, you know, I even got my BP award, so anyone who was in brownies and guides, you know what that is, and it's like, yeah, me. I'm still proud of that. So when did I start feeling so awful about myself? So I want everyone to look at this saying. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but names... Yeah, crap. Sorry, but names can scar you for life. And this is where I'm such a big advocate of people like Sue Anderson trying to eliminate bullying or help our kids be unbullyable at a younger level. I wish she had been around. I so wish she had been there when I was younger. If a child or a young adult hears the same language time and time and time and time again, what do you think they're going to start to believe? If in a classroom or schoolyard environment you are repeatedly told by groups of kids that you are ugly, dumb, stupid, weird, a nerd, a geek, useless, worthless, a loner, don't you think you'd start to get to a point where you started believing it too? This was my reality at high school. Love primary school, high school, so bad. What if even the teachers chose to laugh when other kids called you names instead of picking them up on their crappy behaviour? What if you were too scared to say anything to anyone for fear of reprisal because you knew the name calling, the locker shoving, the pushing around the hallway, the looks, the isolation would only get worse if you said anything? What if you thought you had one friend and then this one friend repeatedly told you how lucky you were to have them as a friend because if you didn't have them as a friend, you'd have no friend at all? She was a ripper of a friend, wasn't she? She was real good.
Nice.
What if the only time you were brave enough to rustle up the courage to speak up or say something to the horrible people was when they were sticking up for the only Asian girl in your school? How do you think that was going to go down? This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. You wouldn't think it now. You know, Keeling Chi was a great friend. She wasn't the one that told me how lucky I was to have her as a friend. She was a real person. What if it got so bad that you used to spend recesses and lunchtimes hiding or volunteering to work in the tuck shop just so others couldn't make fun of you? This was the reality for me. You know, I remember spending countless days just wishing I could just walk out that door. It ended up getting to the point one day where I just hung up. And I didn't, I just walked out. It was halfway through year 9 and I was a good kid. Like I didn't wag class, I did, you know, tried hard, I was respectful of teachers, you know. I sat in the back corner so no one would see me. But it just got to the point one day and there was one final moment and his name, I won't give his surname in case, but his name was Mark and he said one thing and I was in the back science room and I walked out, that was it. I couldn't handle it anymore. I went home. When I started getting ready for TAFE, I was trying to find out if I could have any pictures of myself from my first high school. So I don't know if it's irony, I don't know if it's just the way it's meant to be, but I couldn't find any of my first high school pictures, none of them. I'm going to stack of pictures. I asked Mum if she could have a look at home. She couldn't find a single one either. This is the only photo that we could find of me at around that age. Now see the haircut? That was my biggest mistake, my biggest regret. And I know it's so trivial, it's a haircut, big deal. I had my hair cut short at the end of grade 6 to go into year 7. I loved it, I thought it was great, it was so much more practical. But the names started. That was when, you know, things like, oh, you look like Elvis, are you a boy or a girl? Helen, are you sure you're not gay? I don't have no issue with any of that, but I've always also had broad shoulders and calf muscles and had muscly build. But then came the other ones like, oh, here comes Conan the Barbarian. G'day hairy arms. All sorts of horrible things which, you know, teenagers will feel like crap if you say that enough to them. I actually wax my arms these days because I still hate it. I don't get back to Sunbury as often as I'd like to because Mum and Dad's house is still very close to the high school and Sharon knows and Mum knows that I look at that high school, I drive past that high school now and I still get anxious and tight in the chest. And it's been, let's just say a lot of years, 25 years. I wish I could talk to this girl now though and tell her, but you have beautiful eyes. You had a nice smile, you're a good kid, you're a good student. You're an okay big sister, yeah, we fought. All kids do. But I wish I could tell her that and instead I just put the mask on. all I saw was the horrible haircut and memories that I attached to that haircut and what it was like. So halfway through year 9, I changed schools, and it was great. I ended up going to Gisborne Secondary College, and it was fantastic, and I was so glad I did. Thought I found the solution. I made new friends. I did well at school. Was a big part of the school community, you know. Socially, I was fine, you know. I was SRC president, you know. I didn't make close friends, but everybody accepted me and I accepted everyone, so I didn't ever feel isolated anymore. Got my first real boyfriend. This is Ryan. Oh, he's gone. It's not Ryan. My dead ball. This is me in year 12. It's my first real boyfriend, Ryan. Oh, look, I still love Ryan. I'm not in love with him, and I didn't want to be his mum's wife in the end. But he's still a nice person, lovely family. You know, he was part of our family for years. I was in line to achieve a TER score. I don't know if that's still what they call these days, but of a mid to high 80s. And then about 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I had a horse riding accident. I went on a trail ride. Opted not to wear a helmet. Stupid. Very stupid. I don't remember the trail ride. I don't remember falling off the horse. I don't remember the ambulance ride all the way from Sunbury to the Royal Melbourne Hospital. I vaguely remember waking up in the middle of a CAT scan vomiting. And then the next thing I really remember is a doctor standing there saying to my mum, yes, she could take me home, but only because of what my mum did. Now, my mum at the time was running a rehabilitation hospital affiliated with Royal Melbourne, so she was there every week talking to these neurosurgeons and everything, and she used to assess patients for their suitability to go to rehab at her hospital. So they kind of figured that I'd get better one-on-one care at home with mum, so they let me go home. Overall, I was really lucky. You know, yeah, there was a distinct possibility I had some minor bleeding on the brain, had some swelling combined with a pretty nasty concussion. I had some temporary memory loss issues, great, just before all your VCE cats in 12. And that combined with being told you can't study, you can't read, you've got to sleep, you're not allowed to stress, you're not allowed to worry, and you can't go back to school properly for a little while. In the end, I kind of ended up in the low 70s. And when you're on target for something really high and you're like, yeah, I can do this, I'm going to go to Monash, I'm going to study marketing and management, it's going to be great. I ended up in Ballarat. Geez, I'm glad. Basically, I celebrated my 18th birthday party. Just remember, it was 2 weeks before. I wasn't allowed to drink at all. Mum and Dad took me out for tea to the local RSL and gave me $5 to put in the pokies because I could do that. And then I moved to Ballarat, as I said. So things started going downhill for me again. First semester up here, I knew no one. You know, Mum and Dad were an hour away. My boyfriend was at university up at Dookie. Everybody knows Dookie College. Things that I used to enjoy doing, didn't enjoy doing them anymore. I just wanted to sleep, but I couldn't. I couldn't get excited about the old week parties and all those sorts of things. I tried, and Kirsty, you probably remember, I forced myself. I went out, we got very drunk. But it wasn't really what I was thinking it was meant to be. I was permanently anxious, but you know, I thought maybe I just need to quit, give up, go live back with Mum and Dad, and maybe I can't do it. But I didn't want to disappoint Mum and Dad. I didn't want to not finish my degree. I stopped calling Mum and Dad. Couldn't call my boyfriend as often as I wanted because, you know, back in those days, mobile phones were really expensive, and, you know, STD calls were the same. And, you know, we didn't have internet at home. Didn't even have dial-up, you know. It was the olden days. I don't think my kids would cope. But basically, you know, someone crashed into my car, and that was sort of like almost the final straw. I was crying myself to sleep again every night. I was sharing property with someone who, she wasn't very well in herself, but she couldn't see that either. I hope like how she's okay these days. I just felt helpless. I felt useless, lonely, and the mask was back on. I was going through the motions, you know. I was getting up, I was going to uni, I was being the good student. You know, I was getting up and I was going to my casual job, good employee. But essentially I was becoming the duck. Now, you all know what the duck is. I guarantee you've all done the duck. Some of us do the duck better than others. My mum described me as a duck at my regularly, no, and then Dad told the story at my 21st, which I didn't want to have, remember, that Pam described Helen as a duck, you know, cool, calm, collected, coasting along, but paddling like hell underneath to keep up. Nicest thing my dad's ever said, he said, but to me, she's my swan. Oh. And he is a sweetie, my dad. He's, you know, he can be a bit tough, but he is a sweetheart. So, you know, we can all be a bit of a duck at times. Some of us will be different types. You could be the dory one, like I was, just keep swimming, you know the type. But what we need to do is focus on the light that is at the end of the tunnel, because I promise you it is there. You need to look forward to the dawn of a new day. And for me, this came in the form of an acquaintance at the time who told me, he told me, didn't ask me, are you okay? He told me, he said, you're not okay, Helen. You're not okay at all. You need to go and see a doctor. You need to go and see this doctor. Okay, all right. I went and saw this doctor, and the first appointment, it lasted for probably close to an hour. He told me straight up, he said, you've got chronic depression. I said, oh, what a load of rubbish, you know, silly, you know, crap. He said, you need to go on medication. I'm like, I'm not going on medication, don't be ridiculous. And then I cried, and cried, and cried, and he sat there handing me tissues. He's still my family's GP, he's gorgeous. And then he sat me down after I'd stopped crying so much, and he said, Helen, you're not a stupid person, you're a smart woman. I said, oh, thanks, friends. He's like, I want to talk to you about, you know, this medication thing. If you were a type 1 diabetic, would you take insulin? I'm like, well, of course I would. He said, well, the type 1 diabetic can't make insulin that their body needs. I'm like, yeah. And he said, well, it's just the same. He said, you need to be able to take these tablets, maybe temporarily, maybe long term, to be able to balance the levels in your brain so that you can actually then start working on getting yourself better. Okay. And I'll never forget that. But the real irony came 4 years later when I was back again sitting in that same clinic and he actually diagnosed me as a type 1 diabetic. So that was kind of funny. I was like, you've got to find something to be laughing about. So there you have it. There's the abridged backstory. I've left some bits out, but don't forget I'm a very experienced duck. There's some things that I don't even want to talk about. You know, some things that don't help anyone to know, some bad friendships that I had, some of the really self-destructive behaviours that I was indulging in, and they serve no purpose other than for people to know they do exist, they're real, and you know, if you don't get the right help, they can lead you into a lot more problems. So my story is certainly not unique. It's no different, it's not special, it's, you know, no different to hundreds and hundreds of other people dealing with depression and anxiety. But most importantly, I wanted to actually now touch on the things that have actually helped since my original diagnosis. So I'd hoped the magic tablets would, but they didn't. They helped, you know, to help me get stable again so I could work on myself. Now, when I was first diagnosed, I was a full-time student studying a double degree, working part-time at Macca's and casual at Macca's and casual at IBM. After having to have my appendix suddenly removed, my dad forced me, again, tough guy, I remember, but smart, says to me, you can't keep doing all this, you've got to pick. So I went with the head and not the heart, and I left Macca's, which was great fun, if anyone ever worked at Macca's. And I stayed with IBM, which I'm glad I did, because over the years of working for IBM, this then turned into a full-time position. And as Margie alluded to, I purchased my first property when I was 20, and then I purchased a house not that long after. And I'm so glad that I did go the IBM option, because when I got really, really sick, I needed to take 2 months off work. Now, back then, IBM gave unlimited sick pay, basically. I don't know if they still do. But I'm really glad, because that meant I could keep continuing to function and working on myself to get better, and I didn't have to worry about the financials. Now, lesson one, and it's kind of ironic given that I work in an insurance company now, but keep in mind, we don't do personal insurance loans, we do general insurance, we're very good at it. I'll give you a couple later. But lesson number one, take out income protection early. Income protection can become very, very expensive if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness or some other chronic illness. So do it early, because at least then you've got the benefit of having it there later on if you need it. One of the hardest things to explain about mental illness or any invisible illness is why you're feeling so crap when you look perfectly fine. And that's really hard. I spent a lot of time during that stage back at my doctors, counsellors, even at a psychiatrist, because the medication I'd been on previously wasn't working. He changed me over to a different one, but the transition of coming down off one antidepressant and then going back onto another, I've now been off antidepressants now for about 4 years. I haven't had to take any for 4 years, so I don't know how they all work now. But back then, if you come off one, you need to come off one. And then you need to go on to the other. And as you come off and you go on to another one, back then they also were giving me Valium to help ease the transitions. The shittiest times in my life, I kid you not. And what happened? I met my husband. So sometimes life's got to really hit rock bottom before something really good really happens. I wasn't looking for anyone. I'd spent a lot of time working on being okay with who I was. I'd done a lot of time like walking around the lake. I've walked so many laps around that lake. I reckon I know just about every duck on the lake personally. You know, I took up riding a bike, and that was good. But I also spent a lot of time on my own deliberately, in near empty cafes, drinking, you know, coffee here and there, mostly soda water and tea, because I knew that the coffee wasn't necessarily that great. Doesn't mean I don't love my coffee. But I started doing things like calligraphy. I'd tried the meditation, the yoga, and that sort of stuff. It doesn't work for me. My brain keeps going. I can't switch it off and just focus on. I just can't do it. You know, my brain keeps going. But doing the calligraphy forced me to watch the ink, to form the letter, to mind the shape, to look at the colours, and then to go from a blank piece of paper, to work on it with intent, with mindfulness, and to create something at the end. It's not for everyone. Some people might want to take up cross stitch or crochet, or but it's whatever works for you. Like, you don't think that you have to go and do the meditation, the yoga. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But don't stop looking until you find something that does work. It could be any number of different things. Anthony and I met in the March, had our first date in the April, moved in together in the July, got engaged in the August, got married in the December. Hands up here. Who's here who knows my husband or have met my husband?
How'd you plan a wedding in that time?
Oh, our wedding was planned in probably 2 weeks, was it, Mark? I don't know, I wasn't fast. It was, yeah, Ant was there, I was there, the celebrant was there, the rest was decoration. I've spent more on a pair of shoes than I did on my wedding dress, so not these shoes. But those people who have met my husband know, as far as I'm concerned, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Him and the 2 boys, they are my be-all and end-all. Obviously, you know, these guys keep me going. They're a massive contributor, but I need to fast forward again in terms of workplace. For me, I'm the kind of person, I need to work. I tried to be a stay-at-home mum after I left my job in the railways, and that lasted about 6 weeks. And I was really unwell, and, you know, I've spoken, you know, about IBM. I moved from IBM to Rural Ambulance. They were great. In the space of 2 months, I was at Rural Ambulance, now Ambulance Victoria. Again, beautiful people, wonderful people. They're such a supportive work environment, and I was well mentally the whole time I worked there. And I think it had a lot to do with the people that were there too. But in the space of 2 months there, we had William, 2 months prem, really sick, nearly died. And then a little over a month later, my mother-in-law died. Now, my mother-in-law was the most beautiful person. I had the world's best mother-in-law, and I miss her. Her name was Helen Elizabeth Stevens. My name was Helen Elizabeth Stevens. So after leaving the ambulance service, I started with Online Rail. My mate Dave, who's heard me talk about Railway Dave. No? Love Dave to bits. Great bloke. Brutally honest. And then after I left Online Rail, I got really unwell again. That was part of the reason I left, because I was under so much stress, 12-hour days, long shifts, stress. Decided I was just going to try and be the stay-at-home mum bit that I spoke about. That didn't work. Anthony and I bought acres out of town. We put our house in Alfredton on the market, and Peter Burley, who I used to work with at Macca's, rang Anthony one day and said, when Helen realises she's not really cut out to be a stay-at-home mum and she needs to do something, tell her I'd love to have her as my PA. His words went along the lines of, she'd be the most overqualified PA in Ballarat, but, you know, I don't care. And I said to Anthony, well, what sort of hours? Pete's response, whatever she wants. Well, I can only do school hours that's fine. Well, what about school holidays and if the kids go to have school? Don't come in. And that is so what I needed. I needed to get it into my head, just as a lot of other mums and women do, is you can be productive, you can contribute to a workplace, you can make a workplace a huge success, but you're still allowed to have work-life balance. Prior to that, I had no work-life balance. I lived to work. And that was it. Friends had come over to our house on the weekend while I was still in the railways, and I'd still be placing staff. I'd still be arguing with railway workers out on rail tracks about, no, you can't because you've got your boots, so you can't work. You know, stupid things. I asked Dave, Railway Dave, I asked Pete, and I asked one of my current directors, Kay Jackson. I asked before I started preparing for this if they could please give me their words on, well, what is it like? You know, 2 of them chose purposely to employ me, knowing full well I had a chronic illness, knowing full well that I'd suffered badly from depression. They didn't care. And then Dave, my railway colleague,